Every now and again, when I'm feeling adventurous, I find it useful to click on over to Fox News and see the way video clips and news headlines are getting refracted and fed out to tens of millions of cable news subscribers all around the country.
Fox News alert, a night of anarchy on the West Coast after Antifa got their hands on more weapons than Zelensky.
This is Jesse Waters, for instance, talking about the college protests a few weeks back. He meant to call these protesters the Kafia Antifa, but anyway.
Not your typical, mostly peaceful protesters. Weapons of choice included fire extinguishers, bottles, 2x4s, and umbrellas.
Laura Ingraham dubbed these protesters pro-Hamas brats. Sean Hannity called them radical, ignorant freaks.
Islamic extremists, if they just yell loud enough, Joe, your president, will do whatever they want. Take a look.
Justin Peters, who watches Fox for Slate, he says all this name-calling has become very familiar.
The point is all to, create this very image-laden narrative of a country under siege.
It sounds like you've seen this tactic before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It recurs every 4 years. The Summer Olympics and America on Fire. That is the quadrennial equation, and Fox News solves that equation still better than any conservative media outlet in the country.
When Justin says every 4 years it seems like America's on fire, at least over at Fox, he means every presidential election year. And of course, we are in the middle of one of those right now.
Does the network seem happy to have Donald Trump as the Republican nominee?
That's an interesting question. To the extent that a network as an entity can have an opinion about a specific guy, they're certainly not standing up and saying he is unfit for office. But it is interesting to sort of chart how Fox has, perhaps with a little bit of resignation, accepted that they, and indeed the entire country, are buckling up and taking this same ride again.
The erstwhile leader of Fox, Rupert Murdoch, reportedly preferred Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to Trump. In the early days of the primary, Fox's coverage seemed to reflect that. As they say, the best laid plans often go awry. Justin says, it doesn't matter. Fox still has a plan here. In fact, our bosses at Slate think Fox's role in this election could be so pivotal. This week, they're doing a whole series of stories to help the rest of us understand it.
The way that they're approaching the Trump candidacy is sort of like the same way they approach most candidacies, which is to spend less time actively, positively advocating for whoever the Republican candidate is, and more time just creating the narrative that, thanks to Democrats, the world is on fire.
Huh. From the outside, it seems to me like Fox has been through a whole lot over the last couple of years. They fired one of their marquee hosts, Tucker Carlson. They went through a bruising litigation process over their coverage of the last presidential election and paid nearly $800 million to keep that lawsuit out of court. They have a bunch of competitors, whether you're talking about One America News Network, Newsmax. Why do you think we should still be paying attention to them in the first place? Like, do they really have the power to influence an election?
I think that the question we are actually asking here, or should be asking, is it plausible that a steady drumbeat of hysterical coverage about what is wrong with America every hour of every day for the next 6 months, can that help influence people who are not paying very close attention and make them resolute or angry enough to go to the polls and pull the lever for Donald Trump? And I think that is incredibly plausible. And that is why I think, despite all of the other ways in which Fox News might be diminished, that they are still incredibly important to the 2024 election.
Today on the show, the Fox News game plan for 2024 and why it matters. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Discover. When it comes to your finances, Discover wants you to know they are the credit card that is always there for you. With 24/7 U.S.-based live customer service, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, that means no more waiting for, quote, normal business hours just to get a hold of someone. We are talking real service from real people whenever you need it. Get the customer service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
We all have that friend who wakes up early to go get everyone McDonald's breakfast, while the rest of us sleep in. This is your sign to thank them. And if you're that friend, this is us saying thank you.
Just a friendly reminder that right now, get any size iced coffee before 11 a.m. for just 99 cents. And a satisfying sausage McMuffin with egg is just $2.79. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
To understand the moment Fox finds itself in right now, it is useful to trace how this conservative news network got here. It may seem hard to believe, but when Donald Trump first burst onto the political scene in a serious way, back in 2015, a lot of the people at Fox were a little lukewarm on him.
Fox did not think of him as a conservative, which, was not an unusual opinion. It is sometimes difficult to remember now that Trump has entirely captured the mainstream Republican base, that when he descended that escalator in 2015, the problem that mainstream conservatives had with him was not primarily that he was crude or problematic. It was that they did not think that he was a conservative, that he had, been friends with the Clintons, had, expressed liberal opinions, was famous guy from New York City. Fox's problem with Trump was both that they thought he was an unelectable clown and that they did not trust his conservative bona fides.
But when Trump shocked the world and won in 2016, many of Fox's talent and executives, like a lot of conservatives, seemed to change their tune.
There's a moment I remember I was watching Fox's coverage of the 2016 election day for Slate, and I remember as early returns came in, it initially looked like how everyone thought it was going to happen, right? Clinton was winning early states, and the panel on Fox was morose, and they were saying this outcome is going to have to prompt a reckoning within the Republican Party. And then, Fox anchor Brit Hume, I remember this clear as day, looked down at his phone, and he'd gotten an alert that Trump had won a state that he wasn't supposed to win. And he let out a little blurt of excitement.
No, listen, this is a lot tighter than anybody thought, and it's exciting because there are some states here that we didn't think were going to be in play. Now, it could turn out in the long term that Hillary Clinton fights back, but right now, it is neck and neck.
Yeah. It's also interesting.
And from then on, Trump kept on winning, and by the time midnight came around, the world was entirely different, and Fox News's plans for the next 4 years were different too.
Yeah. I mean, once Trump became president, it seemed from the outside like there was kind of a degree of symbiosis, mostly because Trump had close relationships with some of the hosts, especially the evening hosts, people like Sean Hannity. Was that true? Like, was there this symbiosis, or was it more complicated than that?
A little bit of both. There was a symbiosis from the talent perspective, while also thorough unease in certain respects from the executive perspective. Imagine that you are the doofuses in the morning on Fox and Friends, and you got to wake up at 2 a.m. drive in from Jersey or wherever you live to get to the studio, to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 6 a.m. Eastern every single day. You've been doing this for 20 years. And then all of a sudden, it becomes clear that the actual president of the United States watches your show every day and responds to it in real time, and sometimes calls in to react to some of the dumb stories that you have put on the screen. That's a very heady feeling. You get the sense that you're actually talking to the president, and the president is talking back to you. And you saw that not just with the morning show, but, Sean Hannity wielded more influence during the Trump administration than he had wielded in the preceding 20 years that he'd been on the network.
How so?
Well, in his most recent book about Fox News called The Fall, the author Michael Wolff argued that Hannity had functioned as sort of a shadow chief of staff in the Trump administration, that Trump would talk pretty much every decision through with Hannity, that there was a direct line between the two men.
He was Trump's phone-a-friend.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Sean Hannity is Trump's phone-a-friend, according to Michael Wolff. And this is not necessarily a great thing for the executives at Fox News, right? Because what Fox News wants is to create an atmosphere where any Republican can win. Not just an atmosphere where they are constantly lauding one specific guy.
Because that gives that guy too much power?
Yeah, then the power equation is flipped. It's inverted, right? That guy is running the day, and Fox is just reacting to that guy.
So how did things change inside Fox during the 2020 election process? I remember so clearly, Fox was actually the first network to call Arizona, which is a key state, and they called it for Joe Biden. It was the correct call, even though afterwards people said it was probably too early. It enraged Donald Trump, which kind of sets the stage for a bit of a falling out between Fox and Trump.
Oh, it sure does. It was a jaw-drop, double take, spit take moment when Fox called Arizona.
It's been clear for a while that the former vice president is in the lead in Arizona and was most likely to win the state. It has been in the category that we call knowable but not callable for about an hour. We finally called it. Right now, yes, there are some outstanding votes in Arizona. Most of them are coming from Maricopa, where Biden is currently in a very strong position. And
they did it hours, if not days, before any other news organization did so. And by announcing that Biden would win the state of Arizona, that narrowed Trump's path towards victory to the point of near impassability. And you're right, he was furious. A lot of people were furious on the right. A lot of people were furious watching at home. And as the days went by and the narrative of a stolen election began to percolate, and Fox News did not adopt that narrative to the extent that certain even less responsible actors did, Trump got more upset. Viewers got more upset. They started to migrate to even dumber channels even further down on the channel listing, like Newsmax and OAN. There was a stretch there. There was like a week in November or December 2020 when for the first time ever, a Newsmax show, their ratings beat the same Fox show in that same time slot.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's nuts. It was Greg Kelly, who is literally like a sentient piece of cheese. There's nothing to watch there. And if Greg Kelly is beating Martha McCallum in the ratings, then there is trouble in paradise. And that was sort of the stretch of time in which the statements that later led Dominion Voting Systems to file a libel lawsuit against Fox were made on the air. And there's no proof that I have of this, but it very much seems plausible to me that executives at Fox saw this viewer flight and were like, we got to say something to bring the flock back home. And that got them in $800 million worth of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's that big of a stretch to say that. You've said that Fox's interest, really, when it comes to politics, is just making sure conservatism is in a good place, not any one candidate. I have a couple questions about that. First of all, do you think Trump understood that while he was in office? And do you think Donald Trump understands that now?
I don't know if it's glib to say that I'm not sure if Donald Trump understands much of anything on a truly linear level. I think he understands power and weakness, and I think he definitely understands that he is in the power position vis-a-vis Fox. And look, Fox News, to a large extent, created the playbook that the American conservative political project has run for 30 years, right? You take a world in which things are generally trending better and make people think that things are generally trending worse. And when Donald Trump officially enters the national political scene in 2015, he does the exact same thing over and over and over again, as only someone who has cable news brain knows how to do.
He outfoxed Fox News.
Yeah, he outfoxed Fox News. That is exactly what Donald Trump did.
We'll be back after a quick break.
The future of America is in your hands. This is not a movie trailer, and it's not a political ad, but it is a call to action. I'm Mila Atmos, and I'm passionate about unlocking the power of everyday citizens. On our podcast, Future Hindsight, we take big ideas about civic life and democracy and turn them into action items for you and me. Every Thursday, we talk to bold activists and civic innovators to help you understand your power and your power to change the status quo. Find us at futurehindsight.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Over the last year or so, some commentators have started sounding the death knell for Fox. Can you give some examples of why some people believe Fox News is kind of on the decline when it comes to, leading conservative viewers?
There's two big ones that I can point out right now. In November 2022, the midterm elections that were supposed to be dominated by a red wave, that wave didn't happen. It was more of a trickle, right? And this being an election in which Donald Trump had put his stamp of approval on many objectively subpar candidates, the general sentiment was that Trump is done, his political fortunes are over. And at that point, there was a sense that the network was now backing the presidential prospects of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And you noticed for a few months there, conspicuous placement of DeSantis, both in reference to him and, airtime for him and his surrogates. And as we all know, Ron DeSantis is not going to be the GOP presidential nominee in 2024. And Fox News is supposed to be this big, vaunted propaganda operation that can manipulate the levers of power and get people in office whoever they want. And they just weren't able to do that with Ron DeSantis. And it's led some people to think, well, it's Fox's day. It might be past.
The second issue plaguing Fox was the Dominion voting settlement. After several Fox hosts claimed Dominion's voting machines helped steal the 2020 election, the company sued Fox. And instead of going to court, Fox eventually settled for nearly $800 million.
That's a substantial amount of egg on that network's face. And if you combine the impact of that settlement with the blunted impact of Fox's ostensible get out the vote powers, then you arrive at a potential conclusion that the network's powers are fading and it's no longer as influential as it once was.
You argue that it's too soon to count Fox out as a media giant. Why do you say that?
Well, first and foremost, the arguments about Fox's diminished sphere of influence have some merit. The almost $800 million settlement, that's not chump change. Combine that with the loss of certain marquee personalities like Tucker Carlson, the general decline of cable, combined with the rise in competitors to Fox, and the sense that Fox wasn't able to put over Ron DeSantis' presidential candidacy, all combines to make people think their influence is diminishing. And, maybe it is in comparison to some, historical peak. But let us not mistake a decline from a peak for a decline into literal irrelevance, because Fox is not irrelevant. The question that we need to be asking when we're asking what's happening to Fox News is, can Fox News, through the dissemination of storylines that make liberals look like chumps and the world look like a dangerous and disorderly place, effectively sway the approximately 100,000 undecided voters in 4 or 5 states who will be the people to determine the outcome of this year's presidential election? And I think Fox is still in prime position to do that.
Justin says there have been some important internal changes at Fox since the last time Trump was in office. For one thing, some of the talent who had expressed skepticism about Trump's role in the GOP have left the network or been pushed out. Then there's the retirement of Rupert Murdoch back in the fall, which paved the way for his son Lachlan to take control of Fox Corp. Lachlan is widely seen to be more receptive to Trump than his father was. Most people probably don't think of Fox as having checked Trump very much the last time he was in office. But there were these specific moments, like calling Arizona for Biden. They mattered. Now, if Trump got reelected, what gets broadcast might look pretty different.
It would move from passive acceptance to active acceptance, right? In the first Trump term, Fox's coverage was often marked by a passive resignation, like, this is our guy, and he might be, a little bit digressive and controversial, but, we're certainly not going to say that any of the charges against him have merit. Instead, we're going to say that he's being tormented by the left, right? If Trump wins the presidency again, that sort of passive resignation and defense of a person who they never wanted to be president in the first place may well transmute to active appreciation for and active advocacy of the theories of the man who has pulled off the greatest political comeback in American history, which is what it will be if Trump wins.
I mean, what you've been saying here is that last time around, Fox was holding back. But there's a possibility that they're just no holds barred if Trump wins.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. In the first campaign, the first Trump administration, Fox was holding back. They weren't sure where this was going. They weren't sure how long it was going to last. If Trump wins again, and there is absolutely the possibility that Fox is going to come out no holds barred.
Justin, I'm always grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Justin Peters is a Slate correspondent and the author of The Idealist, Aaron Swartz and the Rise of Free Culture on the Internet. You can read his article about how Fox wields its influence and our whole package of Fox News stories over at slate.com/Fox. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little boost from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here next time.
Owning a business isn't just an occupation. It's a legacy for those you want to pass it on to. At Sandy Spring Trust, succession planning is one of the many aspects of wealth services we provide. We'll work with you one-on-one to answer questions and advise you on valuations, transfer of ownership, and much more. What's your next financial destination? Visit sandyspringbank.com/wealth. Wealth and insurance products are not FDIC insured, not guaranteed, and may lose value. Wealth products offered by Sandy Spring Trust, a division of Sandy Spring Bank.